listening. Winter break had not even happened yet when he was already saying this, and then coming out months and months and months later and denying it and saying the exact opposite in public to people and politicizing the virus and literally giving bad health advice when he knew and acknowledged and stood there and said, this is deadly stuff.
And so what was President Xi saying yesterday?
Well, we were talking mostly about the virus, and I think he's going to have it in good shape, but it's a very tricky situation.
Indeed,
it goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. The touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one.
It's very tricky.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. People don't realize we lose 25,000, 30,000 people a year here. Who would ever think that, right?
I know. It's
pretty amazing. And then I say, well, is that the same thing? This is more deadly. This is 5 per. This is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%. So this is deadly stuff.
Yeah. So this is. it's very, very serious here. And on January 28th, this is, I'd say, way more damning for, maybe not way more damning, but pretty damning for Donald Trump. Kind of comparing him to George W. Bush in the same way where that guy came up to him and was like, on his vacation, and was like, Bin Laden's determined attack inside the United States, Mr. President, want to do something about this? And then he just goes, cover your ass, go home. And by the way, look what day it is today. Funny you should say it. Funny it should come up. But yeah, we're still living with the consequences of that crisis. We're still, the far-reaching effects of it, and a lot of it was created by us in reaction to it. A lot of more far-lasting effects. But still, we see people with, for example, I'm getting off a 9/11 tangent here, but it's so outrageous to me that we see these people with these health injuries and how they were lied to at every turn by the government, who is supposedly representing the people who were probably going to be pretty appreciative and really support and approve of and want to see these people, these first responders who saved them and were really the heroes of the nation more than anybody else in the days following, taken care of. If we can't take care of them, then what are we as a country? What's the point? Anyway.
So now I understand.
If it was too early.
Your new national security advisor, O'Brien, said to you on January 28th, Mr. President, this virus is going to be the biggest national security threat to your presidency. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. I'm sure if he said it, I'm sure he said it. Nice guy.
No. Yeah. Him warning me about an impending crisis coming. Oh, nice guy. So anyway, yeah. So we know this is part of, again, a series. This is the important part. A lot of that you're definitely not going to see or you will see it. You'll see Rage inside the White House. The new book Bob Woodward is promoting from Simon & Schuster. This is, again, conducted for Woodward's latest book, Rage, which is being released on September 15th. Judging from what has been released so far, Trump was much more coherent and infinitely more honest in these interviews than has ever been during a White House press briefing with the American people in any way, shape, or form. He talked to Woodward about how plenty of young people were being affected by the disease, meaning he knew months and months ago that it would badly affect children and still tried to rush them back to the classroom, saying a lot of young people affected with this, Bob. Not just the old people. No, Bob. He said, again, I like to play it down on March 19th, 6 days after he declared a national emergency, because I don't want to create a panic. These days, colleges are blaming students for return to campus failures, but how could anybody whose brain isn't poisoned by the nonstop barrage of horrific news not be confused by all this? Is it serious or is it not? He was also saying one of these briefings and another thing entirely to Woodward days later. He was just saying something completely different, completely contradictory. An April 3rd task force briefing, Trump was still downplaying the virus. Again, this is after he said March 19th, I want to play it down. And really, February 7th was when he learned it was deadly and how really difficult it was. He said, I said it's going to go away, and it's going away. Yet 2 days later, on April 5th, Trump again told Woodward it's a horrible thing. It's unbelievable. It's so easily transmissible. On April 13th, he said, you wouldn't even believe it. But of course, it's going away. It's going away. But really, he was languishing with the virus. Like, he knew what was going on, and still, it's insane. It's insane. It's just like there's such an just. But the really thing was with Donald Trump is like you almost are put up with like an increasingly desperate and fake portrayal of like extreme and over exaggerated like competence and wonderment and like, oh, I'm the best. Like there's nobody like nobody's done this ever better. Like believe me. Like, and that just becomes gradually more ridiculous as time goes on and more transparently see through, which is becoming at this point. Like it is horrific. Like this is just a complete and utter abandonment, a complete and utter abdication in a shameful way of any kind of presidential duties or whatever. Even considering the sort of discrepancy between what Trump said privately and public is generally shocking. So awful looking. Anyway, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't care. Like, you should really, no matter what side of the political aisle, this is awful. But what's even more jarring is Trump displays an understanding of what's actually happening that completely strips away the argument that rather than being a liar, he's a fool with no handle on the situation in front of him. The Woodward tapes are proof that he absolutely grasped the concepts and then he chose to ignore them in favor of a strategy that he believed would optimize the chances of being reelected and the economy not tanking. That's what he's trying to do here. And it was why we saw a comprehensive relief plan that we talked about recently on the show get completely scuttled because they thought it would only hurt blue states and it would be a point. It would be a point of them spending all this money on blue states, kind of Chris Christie, Obama style, but in reverse. But anyway, as for Bob Woodward, it's really unfathomable how he sleeps at night either. Woodward told Washington Post's Margaret Sullivan on Thursday he didn't agree to any sort of embargo with Trump because, in his words, I don't do that. Oh, okay, I mean, it would be better if you did, Bob. Honestly, in this situation, it would be a lot better if you did agree. Yeah. So Woodward said his aim was clearly time-sensitive information that people need to know about here. Woodward said his aim was to provide a fuller context than could occur in a news story. I knew I could tell the second draft of history. I knew I could tell it before the election. Washington Post publisher Phil Graham famously called journalism the first rough draft of history, which is more this journalism self-jacking off profession tactic, professional habit that I continue to notice and to really dislike. But why not write such a story later in the spring once it was clear that the virus was extraordinarily destructive and Trump's early downplaying has almost certainly cost lives? Again, Woodward said he believes his high purpose isn't to write daily stories, but to give his readers a big picture. And whether that big picture is a rosy picture with lily pads and deer deaths, or whether it's Guernica, he does not care. Absolutely horrific moral behavior from anyone who should call themselves a very well-respected, quote-unquote, legendary journalist. So, yeah, disappointing day for legendary journalists, let's say the least. How about legendary well-known doctors? Dr. Fauci. Even as the number of COVID-19 cases in the United States surpassed 6.43 million and the nation's death toll topped 192,600, the federal government's top infectious disease expert warned Friday that life won't likely return to normal until sometime, perhaps late in 2021. During a televised interview, MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell asked Anthony Fauci, the longtime director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, about his comments earlier this week that it may not be safe to attend movie theaters or indoor events until Europe to the U.S. has a safe, effective vaccine. So that sucks. Yeah, it's just like, think about it. Well into or towards the end of, so about a year from now, we will be back to fully normal. Like, imagine that. Imagine thinking that in March. Imagine thinking that in April, really. Like, it is insane how far we have fallen. Here's a clip.
But by the time you mobilize the distribution of the vaccinations and you get the majority or more of the population vaccinated and protected, that's likely not going to happen till the mid or end of 2021. So in direct
which, by the way, I'm almost certain
question,
that most life will
I said,
be back
if you're talking about getting back
and it probably will
to a
actually
degree of normality, which resembles where we were prior to COVID, it's going to be well into 2021, maybe even towards the end of 2021.
Yeah, so there you have it. A White House advisor, Fauci, also disagreed with President Trump's claim Thursday that the United States has finally rounded the turn in the pandemic. Look, the statistics, they're disturbing. Fauci told Mitchell we're plateauing around 40,000 cases a day, and the deaths are around 1,000, which is really disturbing. The expert expressed hope the U.S. won't see a post-Labor Day weekend surge in cases like what occurred after July 4th and Memorial Day, and stressed the importance of driving down infection numbers heading into the fall and winter months. What we don't want to see is that going into that fall season where people will be spending more time indoors, that's not good for a respiratory-borne virus. You don't want to start off with a baseline that's so high. Fauci also denied that he'd been influenced by the reported efforts of a Trump-allied official within the Department of Health and Human Services to muzzle him or otherwise guide what the expert says publicly about the pandemic. Regarding AstraZeneca's decision earlier this week to halt human trials for a potential vaccine after a participant in the UK showed signs of a physical adverse reaction, Fauci said development was unfortunate but should also reassure the public that safety concerns are being taken seriously, and that apparently what I've heard about this is like it is pretty normal that people have adverse reactions, but doesn't mean the vaccine like they have to start from scratch or anything. They just got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. So that is a little bit of a good news there. That vaccine, I mean, actually it's really not, but still, I don't know. It's all bad news all around, except for this, because this is good. State-level progressive candidates in Rhode Island really celebrated victories Friday after 38,000 mail-in ballots were tallied in this week's primary elections, in which more than a dozen centrist Democratic incumbents were rejected by voters in favor of challengers offering more visionary solutions. This is how you build institutional power in parties, really fundamentally changing the nature of the legislature here in a very big and cool way. The victories of candidates including Cynthia Mendes, a Medicare for All advocate and single working mother who beat Senate Finance Committee Chairman William Connolly, a very powerful figure, and Brianna Henrys, who faced homelessness as a child and campaigned on affordable housing in her state House race following tireless organizing by the progressive groups established in recent years by the state. Reclaim Rhode Island, established in May by former volunteers for Senator Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign, just in May, which is really insane. They were able to manage to build up such a super effective, efficient kind of coalition and group and power to have such an influence on these races here is insane. And it really shows you this is an easily doable model for the left wing in other states. If they want to really begin to attain institutional power and really build up in those ranks, this is how you do it. So the group is being led by volunteers knocking on thousands of doors during the primary campaign with the aim of ensuring working families in Rhode Island that they have a voice in the state capital. So according to WPRI, turnout was high for an election without a high-profile statewide or federal race. Election officials reported an 11.4 voter turnout, higher than 3 of the last 5 presidential elections in the state. Wow, so that is quite something. Progressives posited that Rhode Island voters were adamant about securing powerful lawmakers who will fight for single-payer health care, a Green New Deal, and a state budget that will demand that the wealthiest Rhode Islanders pay their fair share to fund schools and public services. Rhode Island voters delivered, wrote Intercept journalist Ryan Grimm on Friday. On Tuesday, they went to the polls, and it took until last night to finish counting the ballots. But once they had, something stunning emerged, an historic romp by the progressive wing of the party, which tossed out more than a dozen members of the allegedly mobbed up right-wing Democratic establishment. 8 candidates won their primaries with backing from the Rhode Island Political Cooperative, a group started after the 2018 primaries in order to form a strong progressive coalition in the State House, which Mendes described as being corrupt, overrun by sweetheart deals, and controlled by corporate sellout politicians. No one's entitled to their seats, Mendes told journalist Julia Rock of Uprise RI. If you're not working for the people, you will be replaced. What a great way to end our show.